Alex here back in the basement. Got Anakin Starkiller with us. So that must mean one or two things. What does it mean?
It means either we're revealing something or we're scheming to reveal something.
I got the rescuer here.
Mm-hmm.
I have to apologize for how long it's taken to do this video. It's my fault. I've been super busy, but it's here.
Anybody that follows you knows that you put out like 15 videos last week.
I've been pretty busy. 28 days working on the shed.
Yeah.
But it's finally here. I finally have it.
Mm-hmm.
I've been haunting you for this since we saw the reveal on Mando.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to unbox it and check it out. Now, realistically, I haven't even been on the RPF.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've shared pictures on the RPF.
I shared a picture on Instagram that was a sort of Instagram-y version, right, where things are a little fuzzy and a little like I took it with a Polaroid or something like that, but nothing close up with any of the details. So.
Realistically, I haven't seen anything. So this is really big. Styrofoam in here. Holy cow. Wow. It's a lot heavier than I thought. What's the inside dimension?
1 inch.
1 inch. Wow. So technically, like the mom chassis would fit in this. Because it's the same dimensions as the Hero, right?
Yeah, I don't know if it will the whole way, but there are a number of 1 inch chassis that should be easily adaptable.
Holy. Wow.
So that's just to be clear to everyone. What you're holding is one version of it.
That's right. So this is the stunt version.
This
wow,
is
that's really nice. Oh, you got yours all done up.
Yeah. So this is the Hero version of it.
This is really nice inside, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's really nice. So you could put the PCB connector right in there. Real deep blade socket too.
So the way I did it, instead of having outer blade holes, right? This holds the blade. You screw it in with very small, very shallow set screws that bypass the threading when they're in all the way.
Yep. Four of them.
And then you screw the blade into it and it holds it in place.
Oh, the threading is beautiful too. Wow, man, there's not even a seam. This place is good for that. Every time. Yeah. This place is, wow. So we got to unthread it here, just like in the model you showed me. Unthreads here. And oh, got the logo on the bottom.
Yeah. Or you have if you don't want the logo, this is another option.
The threading is beautiful, man.
Yeah, it's really nice. Like you can't really see the seam there at all.
No.
If you don't know, it looks like it is solid. I know sometimes you get the swappable pommel caps or something like that, and there's a seam on the end that sort of gives it away. But these guys have been pretty good at producing material that looks solid.
It's so pretty. It's so pretty, man. This is the same shop that did the DS2?
What you're holding is the Hero section. Actually, is a new shop that did some work for me too. They gave me a better price on that part, and I let them take a run at it, and I was pretty happy with the work that they did with it too. So some of the material in the future might be made by that shop.
Wow. Holy crap, man. Wow.
It's crazy how different it is, right?
Wow. Incredible. So
like it really is like two almost completely different sabers depending upon when you swap them out.
So for the folks at home, this is for the belt hanger.
Mm-hmm.
When Hamill's wearing it on his belt. That's incredible. That's incredible.
When computer generated hybrid Hamill is wearing it on his belt, maybe. You know, I mean, the funny, I mean, it was awesome, right? Seeing him show up on screen, and it was everything that I wanted from that finale. But it's a weird thing to research, right? Because you're like, if we're trying to replicate a prop, and we're like, I wonder what they used on screen. You're like, there's so many layers of composite, right? Of this being put into this, and everything's digitally retouched, and you know, you don't even know whose hand is attached to whose body in the final images you're seeing. It's a pretty confusing thing to try to copy.
What's incredible is how it's a different shop and they nailed the threading.
Yeah.
That would be my only scary concern is if they could, if they could match the threading, and that's perfect. There's no seam or nothing. Wow. Totally different though, huh?
Yeah. It's like, I mean, it's funny because this is, this part's the same size. So you would think, and these two are, quite different in terms of size and shape, right?
Yeah.
And you wouldn't think that they would go together, right? Like aesthetically, you would think like, well, if you stick one big giant, melon on it, it would upset the whole look and feel of the saber. But it oddly, at least to me, it goes together pretty well, in either configuration. I've actually become I really enjoy the stunt configuration
Me
of
too.
this,
Me
even
too.
more than the hero a little bit.
We have so many heroes. That's the thing. We have so many heroes.
And so if the hero that was on Mark Hamill's belt is what we think it was, right? Which very well might be a Rilo saber or
Yeah.
a copy of Rilo's saber. Rilo's saber is an amazing piece of engineering, right? I
Oh yeah.
own something like it, um, and and it's amazing the work that he did with it. But in terms of like the outside aesthetics, it's a simplified version of the Luke hero where everything is made symmetrical, right? And where things sort of line up in a without any of the warts, right? Without any like the asymmetry or and so it can seem a little bit generic, except when you take apart the Rilo and then they're like blown away by the engineering. And so one of the things that like what wasn't that attractive to me in making this run was I said like, well, is it just going to be if I don't have really particular details to try to capture, I'm just making like a generic Luke Hill. But then when we got more images of what the stunt was, I was really interested in the stunt just because it's so different, right? With the big
Different.
giant grips, with this huge emitter, which you wouldn't think would go, but it kind of does. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like the combo of the big grips with the big emitter head. It
Yeah.
just seems I don't know. And when you see, you know, Luke Skywalker on screen just hacking the shit out of all the dark troopers, like it kind of feels like it should be like a monster like this thing.
And even when he's in the woods training,
Yeah.
they have it unignited with the FX emitter on it.
Well, the funny thing about it is you would assume it's all the same, but the pictures we see, at least of the belt hanger in Book of Boba Fett, seem like they don't match anything from Mando, right? Like
It's
all
weird.
the all the funny details, like one of the things that made people think um, that the hero in Mandalorian was a Rilo is that this part here is a little bit longer than normal on most sabers because of the way that Rilo engineered it, right? And that doesn't seem to be the case on the belt hanger in Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, and that's beautiful.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry. I'm excited. I keep interrupting you.
no, no, no. So this, getting this to fit just right did require, at least from in my assembly, a little bit of sanding.
Oh
Right, I
yeah. Yep.
painted the gold here, and then I just sanded the back of this card with some
Yep.
220 because I wanted it to grab. I didn't want to, and I knew that it would require that work by the builder, which isn't that bad. But
I thought it
I wanted
was-
you to be able to get it snug because I didn't want it to fall out, and it wasn't going to be locked in by anything besides a little bit of pressure. So
Yep. Yeah, for the folks at home, when they do sand it, I would be like gentler on one side so it's
yeah,
thicker. That way it grabs.
yeah.
It's beautiful though. I remember last we talked, you were waiting for these to show up.
Yeah.
Wow. And then I was looking at tri-ring, the arrows you have here.
Mhm.
The button Delrin or is that plastic?
This is Delrin. The black button's Delrin. You have the acrylic arrows here that fit into the slots.
Yeah, yeah.
Comes with the screws. Um, Comes with the screws internally that hold the control box in place, and it'll come with the tri-ring.
And you got an Allen wrench in here too.
Yeah, I did. I grabbed a little Allen. I bought, like, 100 of them on eBay so that they would fit. Particularly because the way that the Delrin part is, I have it hooked on here. Um, I screw it in from the inside with the
Okay.
Allen wrench, and it's a little bit difficult. So you might find yourself wanting to to take a Dremel to the edge of the Allen wrench so you can have a nice, like, shallow wrench to turn it with. That's why I thought maybe I should just include an Allen wrench in case people are having any trouble with that.
I've done that a few times. I put them right on the belt sander.
Yeah,
Sometimes
exactly.
you strip one out, put it on the belt sander, and you got a new one.
Exactly. So we got swappable emitter caps if you want a little bit more sound
Yeah,
venting. Although it does have a hole, even in the display configuration, it's got a little bit of hole that will vent sound.
I didn't even pick up on that.
Yeah.
It looks so, you know what I mean? It looks so like a normal cap. I didn't even pick up on that. I still can't get over the threading. Wow. It's beefy too.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Polymer cubes are beautiful. I love it. Finally, finally, I finally twisted your arm enough.
Did.
Hell yeah.
Well, when we got more information about, the origin of and some of the details on the stunt, it made it
Yeah,
more of an
I gotta be
interesting.
careful where we go with this.
Mhm.
I gotta be careful. But how can I say it? We can say we know somebody who owns one.
Mhm.
That's what we can say, and they helped us out.
Mhm.
That's that's as much as we're allowed to say. But wow, man, I want to put a blade in this and just start hacking things.
Yeah. I'm not an FX guy. Most of my stuff is static, but I am planning on FXing this one because what's exciting about the way that they're filming these things now is that you can kind of have your, like, light up, toy lightsabers, and that is what they're using on set. So,
Well,
it's still sort of prop accurate.
and actually, in some scenes in Mando 2, is it Mando? Which one is it? Luke in Mando 2? It's Mando 2 that Luke's in, right? Yeah, because Book of Boba Fett's when we see Luke again.
Yeah.
When he's swinging it around, there's no special effects on the blade. It's the actual tube.
Yeah.
Yeah, this inside is beautiful for the PCB connector. That's a genius idea, having it recessed that little bit. Plenty of room, and plenty of room here too for running all the wires.
Mhm.
Really, really nice, man. Really nice. So, and I like how you added four in here for retention
Mhm.
screws. So you put the blade on first, put the retention screws in, tighten it down, then screw it on, and we're ready to rock and roll.
Mhm.
I like this. I've gotten a lot of messages, and I have to apologize because I haven't really been returning any because there's just so many of them. I don't have the time to fully respond correctly.
Mhm.
So I wait until I, have a day just to do messaging. But I keep seeing rescuer, wins a rescuer, wins a rescuer. So when do you plan on launching this? Or
I got them.
we,
I got half of them boxed up. I ran out of boxes, and then I got more boxes. So, I recently had a child over the summer,
yeah,
so all of my plans on, like, think I'll have time for something, and then he has a meltdown, or or just family demands come up and stuff like that, and all of a sudden things come on the back burner. So if you looked at my kitchen right now, you would see boxes of lightsabers from a number of different projects that were supposed to sort of be out the door that I haven't quite had a chance to launch, because I like to have everything in place before, certainly before accepting any money, but also before telling people, like, it's coming because I don't want to leave everybody hanging for forever.
Yeah, no, that's a good business practice.
But they're all boxed up now. So I'll probably, what is it, the first? I'll probably,
Today is the first.
yeah, I'm gonna take a couple more beauty pictures if I can get some sun, this weekend, and then sometime next week,
Alright.
I'll put them up for sale on the website.
I can, I'll do a video,
Mhm,
a 24-hour, just like the DS2.
mhm.
I'll do a 24-hour, 24-hour heads up video, and then right before launch, and then you're good to go. We're good to go.
And you're gonna do an instructional video with this, right?
I will do an instruction video with this.
I mean,
You've,
like when you've done like the heroes and stuff like that, so like painting and assembling this is not not any more difficult, and actually quite similar to doing the hero, right?
yeah,
Glue these in backwards and tape. I didn't have this done as a separate piece. This is all part of the control box.
yeah.
So it's a little bit of masking off and then painting of the rails. But on here you can't with there we go. See, you can't really tell where like the gold and the brass
That's a
are different, right?
really good color, man.
Yeah, it is pretty
I'm
good.
gonna need that. I'm gonna need that code for the
Yeah, you
video.
should.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Yeah, and for the folks at home, there aren't gray rails on this one.
No.
It's all gold. Yeah, man, beautiful. The I need my glasses. I can't see. Yeah, there is thread. Yeah, there's thread in there. So these
Mhm.
little screws thread in here.
Mhm. They thread in, but they do sort of, the heads are out a little bit, like they are, they're proud on it a little bit,
Okay.
which matches, I think.
And um the arrows I'm gonna just glue in like I've done with the hero.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I did. I put Scotch tape on the outside
Yep.
of it and put them in,
Okay.
and then just hit it with just a little bit of super glue.
And what I do is I leave the scotch tape on there
Hmm.
inside, diffuses it just a little bit.
Hmm.
I'm actually doing your hero saber
Hmm.
with the circuit board inside with the blinking lights,
Oh,
like
nice.
the cave for a client, and that's what I do. I put that scotch tape in there when I assemble it, just to give it a little bit more diffusion. This is a unbelievable piece of machinery product here. For the machine to cut this,
Hmm.
it's unbelievable.
Yeah,
There's so much.
there's a couple difficult angles, to machine on the inside, like specifically, um, when you paint it, right? You see how like it's made to look like this is a top rail that sits on top of a block, and
Yes,
there's this sort of square recess, right?
yes,
Like a few microns there that sits in it. That's a difficult thing to machine, actually. But they did a good job with it.
it's incredible. I actually thought when I first opened it, I thought this was pinched on because you can see how you just mentioned how it looks like it's two pieces, but it's actually all CNC'd out of one block.
Yeah.
Unreal. Huh. No, you've outdone yourself every time, man. Never disappoint. I've been twisting your arm for so long. It's finally here.
Mhm.
Wow. Yeah, so I'm gonna have to get in the shed and start a quick little tutorial, and I'll have that up on the channel too. So next week will be the week then,
Mhm.
sometime next week
Yeah.
for the folks at home, because I've gotten a lot of messages asking
Yeah,
when.
if you're subscribed to the email list that I send out through at starzen.com, I'll give it a 24-hour advance notice. And I'll post something on the RPF, and probably a couple things in some of the Facebook forums or the Facebook boards, like the NEC or R02J, or like the anthology prop site.
I think I
Um,
have to join that one. I don't know. I haven't heard of that one, anthology one.
oh, okay. Yeah. And then and let them know. But then Danny will send out a notification to people that
Yeah.
follow on your page
Make,
too.
make sure if you're new to this channel, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because that will alert you when the video comes out to know when these things are going to go live. Because usually when I work with Starkiller like this, I give a 24-hour heads up, and then the day of, I give like a little reminder, 15-minute reminder. Hey, it's going to happen today.
Hey, when the DS2 V2 launched, it sold out in like 6 hours.
Yeah.
So I mean, I hope the same thing happens. We're talking about the same numbers. There's not going to be a lot of them.
No, that's right. I
So
forgot to mention that. Like I really had to twist his arm to do this, so it's a real low number, a real low count.
yeah.
So act now. This is the only Mando out there. This is the
Yeah.
only one.
No, I've seen people, modify or try to modify the mom by using the static grip or a couple other ones, to sort of convert it. Um, but the mom wasn't really designed for that, right? I mean,
Yeah,
Brian and Adam's thing is to try to replicate the hero as much as possible. Um, it still can make a beautiful, idealized saber. But I've tried with this one to similarly capture like some of the weirdness of this prop.
hell yeah. Oh, thank God, man. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you did this. Thank God. It's been a long time. I've wanted this for a long time.
I know it's hard to believe like that episode came out like during lockdown because I remember, sitting on the couch like and not having been outside in forever and everybody experiencing the return of Luke Skywalker, through that virtual lockdown world that we were all in.
Yeah. Well, I applaud you, man. It's beautiful.
No worries.
Another one to add to the shelf.
That's what we're going for.
So Starkiller was just talking. He's got a teaser of what's coming after this one. So
Okay.
he's gonna run downstairs to go get it.
Give me 1 second, I'll grab it.
All right. So we got Starkiller back.
Okay,
Now
so
I haven't seen this either.
so
I've seen the
I actually
model.
I went downstairs and I don't have a control box on hand right now, but we'll just look at the
Okay.
body first. All right, so this is gonna be this is the smallest run I've ever done. And basically, I pushed this through because I had a new shop that contacted me that said like we want to take a stab at some of your work, and I've had this CAD file. When did Last Jedi come out? Like
Yeah, I remember it. I remember it.
at least 5 years. This was designed with me and Roy using pictures from one of the exhibits that went on tour after Last Jedi come out. And the really difficult thing about doing Luke Skywalker lightsabers, except for the V2 and the V3, is there's nothing to work off of for scale, right? Because
Yep,
there's no found parts on it. Like with the V2 and the V3, we know the length and width and diameter and height of a Graflex clamp.
that's right.
So if you have a Graflex clamp on it, you can start scaling the rest of it.
Yep,
But with the hero and things that are based upon the hero or produced like the hero, there's often not a found part to start with. That
right.
so to come up with the size of it, it's often confused people, and that's why for years everybody that was producing hero sabers were often producing undersized versions because they were working off resin cast and there was nothing to correct them. There was nothing to say like actually it's much larger than that. And it wasn't until some of us, I mean, I remember having my experience when I first saw the hero in person being like, holy shit, this is so much bigger than I ever thought it was, because I was working off the resin casts and I knew the saber through other replicas like the SD Studios, the MR, that were all severely undersized. And it wasn't until I saw one in person, and then we got a couple pictures of the hero up against the ranch saber, right? That you could start scaling it and recognize that it was actually a 1/4 inch larger and significantly larger diameter than like we thought it was. And I did a run of properly sized heroes in, I want to say 2007, and then I think the next iteration happened was when I did the FX Luke hero and then followed by the mom hero right afterwards, right? And then people started recognizing that all of them had been undersized up until that point. So anyway, so back to the Last Jedi. The problem with the Last Jedi saber similarly was we don't know how big it is, right?
That's
And
right.
so even if you can work out some of the proportions, you might have is it 10.5 inches long or is it 11.5 inches long? It's a significant difference in terms of how it feels in your hand. But what happened was we got some pictures of the prop on tour right next to a Graflex, right? Now, and because Roy is like such a wizard at scaling and doing that sort of proportional analysis of um, of photography, he had a virtual model of a Graflex that he had created that he was able to sort of recreate in the computer like that tabletop, and then use it to determine the proper size of the Last Jedi hero. And as far as I know, I don't think anybody's quite got it right. There's been some nice replicas, but I don't think anybody, at least to my mind, hasn't got the proportional scaling quite right, and the size, the overall size, quite right. So one of the reasons why I had to do this is because Roy helped me create the model, and then I sat on it for a while, and so I still owe him one. And also, I wanted one for my collection, and I know you'd asked me.
I need one.
Right.
I need one.
So that was so I had the model. The shop contacted me and said, "We want your business," and I said, "Okay, we'll try producing this and see what you can come up with." And it was a very, very small run because there's been a lot of, Roman's done a version, Dennis has done his. When Dennis has probably gone through like, I don't know, 10 runs of it at this point. So it has been done, but there are some details on this that I think other people haven't quite captured in the way that I've thought I wanted to do it. One was to work off the model that Roy and I came up with, right? Which with the size, which I think also one of my biggest pet peeves in FX Sabers is when there's a big honk and set screw here that like isn't on the original. I mean, I could have, especially since this is back to the rescuer, right? I could have put a big set screw right here, and since this is screwing off anyways, it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But it really bugs me to have extra extra screws and like attachments that aren't visible on screen, that aren't there.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So what I did with this one is I made this screws out.
Yes, I remember this now.
Inside, right? And then there's another blade holder which is downstairs, but fits similarly, right? Where the set screws to attach will go around the blade and then we'll screw into the blade to hold it in place, right? So that you can have an FX Saber that doesn't have, the compromises of like a bunch of, grub screws all over it, the outside. It'll also have the Anakin Starkiller AS label, port on the bottom, if for sound venting.
You can see, I can see the difference just within your hands there.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
And it'll screw apart like like my other ones here. But I'm very happy with the machining quality that they came up with, and I'm happy to have this finally checked off. When it first came out, I thought it was ugly as hell. Just the proportions of it was so weird that like what they came up with, right? Because the proportions of this saber are so very different from the Hero, from the V2, from the V3. This really long emitter, this incredibly thin neck and thin neck here, right? These really, really narrow grip ridges. But ever since I had it machined in the flesh and I'm working on it now, I don't know, I'm kind of falling in love with it in a different way.
Oh, it looks awesome. This is the first time I've actually seen the actual.
I mean, it's
I've seen
the on the camera you can barely even see this flange, but it is really thin. But that's how it is on the original, right? This really really thin lip on the emitter. Another reason I wanted to do this is when The Force Awakens came out, before we even got The Last Jedi, there were pictures of Luke Skywalker's lightsaber, and in my excitement over the new film, I really wanted to make a replica of it, and having absolutely no references except for like one shot from the Target video, I produced a small run of static ones where the body proportions ended up being completely wrong because I was working off of something that looked like the V3, and this looks nothing like the V3. And so I think it's still like a cool custom, but I was like, man, I was way off on that one. So I wanted to do something that nailed it.
But what we had for reference back then on the table,
right?
You know what I mean? I still have it. It's right there on the shelf. I love the thing.
Yeah. But I mean, nothing could be more different than that one and this one. And in some ways, it's
that is totally insane, man. The rings look gorgeous.
It's such a delicate saber. I don't know. maybe it's something sort of indicative about how they're making the props now, right? Where everything's just drawn up in CAD and 3D printed, and I don't know. They have a different design aesthetic with the sequel trilogy
Yeah.
that they went with. But
Now,
I'm actually, I'm finding myself really liking the strangeness of this hill.
I wanted one. I mean, when we come out of the theater, I'm like, I talked to you right away. I'm like, dude, we need this.
Except you hated the movie so much. I was so confused. I was like,
Yeah.
how can you hate the movie so much and
The
want the
movie
prop so
sucked,
much?
man. The movie sucked, but I need this lightsaber.
I
Yeah.
remember you in anticipation of the movie, right? You carved that Luke Skywalker cane.
Yeah, I was so
And then
excited, man.
the movie was over, and I thought you were gonna like break it over.
No, I actually, I'm not ashamed to say this. When I came home that night, I cried myself to sleep. I was weeping in my pillow
Oh my goodness. Okay.
because that was like one of the worst years of my life, and
Mhm.
I used Star Wars to escape.
Yeah.
And I bought every book, and I was in line for episode 8, and I was finishing the Legend of Luke Skywalker book. It came out that same week. I was finishing it because like maybe there'll be an Easter egg in the film. I'm
Yeah.
in line finishing it, and when I came out, I'm like, "That's what we got."
Yeah. I think I similarly had an experience where it was so different from what I had imagined for, you know, 20 years, something like that, right? That it was shocking to me. I think I've appreciated it more since then. I found more things in Last Jedi that I could enjoy, and things that and things in Rise of Skywalker that I can enjoy. That because I've become a little bit more okay with like different, the different iterations, and for me the Legends Luke, because I read the books so much, in my teens and 20s, that was what I thought should have happened to Luke Skywalker, right?
Me too.
When you read 20 books telling the same story, and then all of a sudden somebody comes by and says, "Yeah, nothing like that happened at all." It feels like somebody stole those away from you. But the way, I have a PhD in medieval studies, and the way I kind of look at it is like when they studying like mythology and Arthurian stories or something like that. None of them go together. There's not a singular story, right? Like in the German story, this happens to Percival. In the French story, this happens to Galahad, right? And
Yep.
you know, I don't know. Sometimes like the most true stories are the ones that don't actually fit together, right? When you go like when they don't mash up, you go, okay, I can see how they can all sort of coexist. And so I've developed I think a more relaxed attitude towards the sequel trilogy since then, and I'm excited to have the props now at least.
I kind of, how can you say it? The way my world has been the last year, I
Hmm.
kind of like grumpy old Luke. I kind of
Yeah.
relate to him. Like, you know what?
Mhm.
Hell with it.
Yeah.
I'm done being a Jedi. Leave me alone on my island. Leave me alone in my basement.
Yeah. I was kind of okay with that. I just didn't want him to die.
Yeah.
I just didn't want that to be the end, you know?
Starkiller. No one's ever really gone.
I know. Well, and now thanks to Dave Filoni, and he'll just keep bringing Luke back in CGI form
Oh yeah,
until we get sick of him.
yeah. So how far along are you for that release?
The machining's done. I'm not going to do any more of them. It's just a matter of assembling, taking pictures, posting them. There's going to be a lot in the coming weeks. Up until this summer, my son was born, and I also started completing my thesis for a psychoanalytic training program that I was in. And that thesis took a hell of a lot of time to write, and the baby takes all
Oh
of
yeah.
our energy. So there's a lot of things like in the works or on the shelves. I've got the Obi-Wan Revenge of the Sith sabers that have been in limbo forever, again, where all the parts are there, and I just have to sort of assemble and package everything like that.
No,
Uh,
no, it's dad life now.
hmm,
You're busy. You're
I
busy.
know. But hopefully in like the next month, I'm gonna be able to get those things cracking and get it boxed up and get it out to everyone. I've got
I didn't want to pressure you. I didn't want to pressure you. I was just wanted you
Mhm.
to explain it that way. I don't
Yeah,
get flooded with messages of when's the last Jedi one coming.
yep. No, it's gonna be Rescuer. It's gonna be then it's gonna be Last Jedi, Then probably the Obi-Wan Revenge of the Sith ones that I've had waiting in the wings for a long time. Those might take a little while because I got to paint and I got to assemble.
Yep.
And that depends on when I have the time to get those done.
Load them in the car and come up to the shed.
Yeah,
We'll get
I think
done.
I got to put you to work. And then we got the new episode 1 Obi-Wans that I've been working on
Yes.
with Drew. His model is gorgeous and it's everything that I want. My I mean, I've been working on that one. I have memories of being in college and sort of doodling it on my pad and like thinking about that saber and all the details that I want, from when Jedi Vic was making his in like the early 2000s and tracking down all those details. And I think we've really finally nailed it, except it's the process is the problem. The only problem right now is just translating it from design to manufacturing with like the smallest little details. Everything is lining up. We have prototypes made. The CAD setup was almost perfect on everything except the knurling. They can't get the knurling right. And we even went so far as I bought the tools themselves, shipped them to the shop in China, and
Right.
they used the knurling tool incorrectly, and so then they ship them back to me, and that takes like 3 weeks to get back, and then I have to go home and I have to try to explain to them, and then I'm talking to a rep, so she's talking to the machinist, and they're trying to clarify all those details. But I want to make sure everything's perfect before we start, before I spend any more money making them or before they ship out to people.
One of the very first experiences on the RPF, I remember one of your threads on the episode 1 Obi.
I'll go grab it it's actually right to the side of me. I'll grab it for a second and I can show it. Okay, so this is the Obi-Wan prototype. It's there's so many details on it that are really interesting. This is actually a found item. I was able to track down. I wasn't able to track. Drew was able to track down the part that was used for the activator button. This
Wow.
is almost exactly the right one. Weirdly the part number is the same as the one that was used for Obi-Wan's lightsaber. There is a slightly different knurling because just in production, it's an aircraft part, and for some reason there's a slightly different knurling on it. I was able to use real LEDs on those, which I was excited about. But it's got a lot of details that often get missed. On the original, each one of these cubes is different.
Oh,
Like
no stop.
each one was a lot of times when you see them replicated, it's a ring, right? That like stacks. But
Yeah.
actually on the original, right? Each one of these was individual and inserted. And there's a couple ways we can tell. We have some really close up pictures where you can see underneath it and you can see a sort of lip, right?
No
Showing
stop.
where it ends. And then also somewhere in filming, one of these cubes was smacked really hard and sort of broke the pommel open.
You told me that.
And there's like a big C gouge here. And then it was glued back together. And you can see that was an independent part. A lot of times like this and this are two parts that slide together and there's a little lip here and a gap. A lot of times that ends up being missed, right? Each one of these is cut differently and is asymmetrical. I don't know if the camera picks it up, right? But you see how that's uneven, right? That's a good shot. So you see how like here and here,
Oh, yes.
right? They're not even.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, that's something that was missed. That's missed on the original. Also, let's see. Okay, the emitter is like this, right? It's at an angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How? Oh,
that's how the original was, and not just from the end of shooting, but actually all throughout it, it was cockeyed, and we can tell that because on all of the castings, all of the stun sabers, it's cockeyed in the same exact way, right?
wow.
So what we did to replicate that, because that was something I wanted to capture on the original. Drew was like, I kind of want something that's more even assembled. So what we do is we have two different, there's inside of here, there's a base that the emitter cap screws into, and there's two different bases. One that has like a flat T, and then one where it's like, where it screws on at the proper angle to make sure it lines up right.
Wow.
We recently found out what these parts are.
Yeah.
We're able to match the threading, and so that's pretty exciting because we can track down. We can replicate it properly. A lot of times, this isn't done correctly, this sort of curve. On a lot of replicas, it's more sort of flat across the top. And the
Yeah,
way that they cut in, a lot of times it's more of a sort of deeper C rather than like an angle that goes down,
you can
right?
see it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
The spacing here is a little bit different from one to another. I mean, it's almost hard. It's hard to see, but if you take a mic to the original, which I have done, right? Because I have a stunt saber, you can see um, individual differences there. A lot of times, so there you go. So you see how on the emitter it like cuts in here,
Yes.
right? It's way deeper than on any replica. Like most replicas, because especially if they want to put a blade in there, right? If you want to put a 1 inch blade, you will have to have really shallow cuts. Now, if it's sort of at an angle, you can't really tell. But if you look at it like there, right, and then
Oh
you
yeah, you
see these
no.
big recesses, all of a sudden you go like, well, that they should really go in quite far. You should barely be able to. It's it is the small diameter of the recesses is smaller than 1 inch. So anything that takes a 1 inch blade can't be accurate. Um,
This is by far the most complex replica you've ever built.
it is because the original was so idiosyncratic in the way it was put together, right? It was, you know, things were stuck together and glued, right? These might have been cut with a Dremel. I don't know, like the way that they,
Yeah,
you know, the way that they actually, I don't think I don't think these were cut with the Dremel, but the way that they were cut, right? The way that they are sort of asymmetrical, the way that it comes in and turns in a certain way, doesn't make sense from a production machining standpoint, right? It makes sense from a guy on a Bridgeport, right, cutting them the way that he wants and thinking like, I don't want to turn it, so I'm just going to cut at an angle and
it's
move it in a
true.
certain way,
Yeah.
right? But when you're trying to engineer these things for CNC production, a lot of things don't make sense. So a lot of replicas follow a design language that makes sense for production, right? So if I want to cut this angle for production, it makes sense that that I sorry I put the piece in like this and I like cut with a tool and I go in and over and out, right?
Yeah,
But what that does is it cuts an angle here. And that's not how
correct.
it is in the original. It's straight on the original.
Correct.
So the way that it was cut wasn't that way. It was cut, sorry, it was cut with it situated like everything's backwards because I have my camera mirrored. That's why I'm so confused. So it was cut like this, and they went down and over and cut aside, and then flipped it, and went down and over and cut aside, and then they cut these things individually, right? Which wouldn't make sense for most CNC setups. That's why a lot of replicas like miss some small details like that. But Drew and I worked really hard to try to get everything authentic to the original. The black parts all made a Delrin to replicate the the mixed media construction of the original props, right, which were all aluminum sleeves over resin insides to reduce weight.
Not to interrupt you, but you have a machining background. I don't. Do you
I,
think
mhm,
do you
go ahead.
think the original one was CNC'd? Or that had to be done all by hand on a Bridgeport and lathe, correct?
Yeah, I think it was.
Because that's how everything becomes inconsistent.
Yeah, because they, when they were doing the props for episode one, right, they weren't saying like we need 15 aluminum Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsabers. They made one metal, and then
Really?
everything else is resin, right? Like, or like when they, in that video where they show Ewan picking his lightsaber for the first time, it's a box of resin lightsabers
Yes.
with
Yeah.
some metal additions. I mean, there wasn't a metal Maul hero, right?
Yeah.
There were some parts that were maybe machined out of metal and then cast immediately, and we've only seen the cast ones. Or they might have been machined out of plastic for most parts. I mean, it's easier to cut that.
Yeah.
Um, and when you're thinking about an art department, right, those guys are often not professional machinists. They're not interested in making things out of steel if they don't have to be. Even aluminum, if they don't have to be, right? They want things to be light and durable and easy to cut, and things are put together with glue and putty and then painted over to do the job in 1996, in 1997. Now everything can be done in CAD and then 3D printed, but I mean, so many of the props for the sequel trilogy are all just 3D printed items that then kind of fall apart 20 years later, because that's all they need to be.
And the shame of it is too, is over time, those are all going to degrade and fall apart.
Yeah.
All those 3D prints.
Yeah, that's.
So the episode 1 saber was arisen parts with the aluminum sleeves slid over them.
Yeah.
And the coloring and stuff.
Yeah, we don't have any evidence of an all aluminum Obi-Wan hero or an all aluminum Qui-Gon hero, and none of the Council sabers we've never seen an all aluminum anything there. Right? Wow. There's an aluminum sleeve on the Qui-Gon with an aluminum emitter. There's an aluminum sleeve and metal pommel cubes here on the Obi-Wan.
It makes sense too with the Delrin, because you can cut that so much faster on the lathe.
Yeah, and you can cut it with. I mean, you could cut it on a wood lathe if you wanted to too.
Yeah.
Right? My first saber was a Delrin Luke saber that was cut on a wood lathe with wood tools.
You did it?
No, actually, my Ride 27, who doesn't post on the board anymore, but he used to do these custom sabers. I'm trying to remember what his site was when he had it, but he used to make tons and tons of customs on the RPF. They were like really, really cool, and they had a really interesting sort of design language that was a sort of melding of some like Park sabers from the 1990s and then like the episode 1 Council sabers that was what we thought lightsabers looked like in the early 2000s.
Oh, that's wild. I thank you for sharing all that information and sharing with the folks on the other side of the screen what's to come. Because I'm not gonna say anything, but we're working on another project together that should be sometime next year.
Yeah,
I don't want to reveal any surprise. I don't want to reveal it yet.
Yeah, I had to reject 100 of the first round of clamps because I got the letter.
Oh yeah. Okay, you scared me there. I'm like, wait a minute, is this something new?
Yeah. So, but we should have new ones coming soon.
But no, if anything else you want to catch up on or say? Well, I have you there.
Not on camera.
All right. Well, again, just to recap, these will be launching sometime next week. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. Like on Facebook and Instagram at Stars End. Get on your email list from @starsend.com and keep an eye out for the update of when these go live. I'm going to be posting a 24-hour heads up video before they go live, so make sure you're subscribed. And I want to thank you, Dan, for sharing this with us, and I look forward to doing the tutorial video.
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right, hey, sign us off. You know the words.
Halo X and Starkiller out.